welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and we're very honored today coming to us from Hong Kong, a very distinguished author and researcher, Robert Stanley. Welcome, Robert.
Hello, Alfred. Thank you for having me back on your show.
You know, and as I was sharing with you just prior to the program, your investigation today is so leading edge and so remarkable that I got the basic concepts, but as to the details, I said, I'm going to introduce you and then I'm going to turn it over to you because I haven't quite, my mind hasn't quite wrapped itself fully around all of the details and the implications, although, well, I'll turn it over to you. Put it that way.
All right, but feel free to jump in if there's any questions that come up, please.
Sure.
Okay? All right. I mean, it is your show.
Yeah, I understand.
But it is my article, and honestly, once again, here we go. I didn't intend to write this, Alfred. It was, as I said in the article, January 8th, I was sitting at this computer, and I was looking at Google Earth at a specific location that appears to have what looks like artificial constructions of buildings under the water in the Central Pacific. Now, that's something I've been studying since 2013 when I first wrote an article about a Navy pilot going missing out there, very near where Amelia Earhart supposedly disappeared. So I wrote that article, and I went to that location specifically to see, I was looking for something that might help me with, looking for a portal, actually. I didn't find that. What I saw instead were these, it appears that they are massive buildings that are just below the water, and God knows who built them or when. I mean, we can speculate on that, but this one building in particular is 20 miles long by 5 miles wide, which is enormous. That's something that only the gods could have built. I mean, mankind really doesn't build at that scale typically. So I was looking at that, and I did a screen capture, and I was doing an analysis of the screen capture. I was trying different things in Photoshop to bring out, enhance the details. And so a couple hours later, I went back to the same thing on Google Earth, and it was gone. And I thought, that's impossible. That's just, wait a second, you know, I'm pretty good with computers, so I tried some things. I even went to a different computer, and I tried on my smartphone, and I tried different browsers. Nope, it was gone. It was completely gone, and I thought, that's not, it couldn't have really vanished. You know, it had to, somebody digitally erased it off of Google Earth right there while I was sitting at my computer, just like I'm doing now. So I thought, why would they do that? You know, that's really strange, you know. So I started to think back towards I thought, well, if they can play games like that, if they can literally digitally remove stuff, what could they add things to? Why not? You know, I mean, it's their map. It's digital. They could do whatever they wanted. So I went and I took another look at that so-called Malibu UFO base, because I'm the one that actually found that originally back in 2010. I just never publicized it because I wasn't sure. And it was 2014 is when everybody got really excited about it, because somebody had taken the Google Earth map and tilted it to the extreme and made it look like there was some massive UFO or giant columns, you know, where you could just zoom right in there. Apparently, excuse me, sorry, it's early for me. The sun's just coming up and my throat is really, that happens to me every morning. Sorry, it'll go away. So anyway, I go back to the Malibu anomaly, and I look at that again on the same thing, Google Earth, and I'm looking at it from different angles, and then I realized, and I show this in the article with many screen captures from different angles, it's just a cliff. Now, I mean, it's unusual. I always thought it looked like a mound, like an artificial mound, but the way it was portrayed by a certain talk show host and his crew. They made it so it was over the top sensational. It's like I really couldn't understand how they suddenly came up with that, you know. So it turns out, as you can see in the first page of the article, Digital Deception, um, that this could probably, I think it's actually a hoax perpetrated by the U.S. military, because they probably built something into that themselves, and they wanted to kind of camouflage it, because it's right there on Google Earth. So they created this facade that it looks like this massive UFO entrance, when in fact it's probably something back what they call the Rock Site Project, where they would take what they called a C mount, which is just like a little bump in the thing, and they drilled inside it, and then they created a base, submarine base, inside this secure location. So anyway, it just so happens that there is a naval base right next to that anomaly, and it was built back in the 40s. And there is a lot of UFO activity, though. See, this is what's really curious. I grew up right there, and I had a lot of close encounters right there. And that's also where those ancient ruins that I found up in the mountains are located. That's another reason I was looking at that location, is I was trying to find something else that might be connected to the ancient ruins. So I thought I was done with page one. I thought, well, okay, this is interesting. Google's playing games. That's no big deal, right? But as I was writing page one, I saw a video of these looked like huge doorways on the surface of Mars that led to the interior. I mean, the subterranean entrances to Mars on Google Earth. And I thought, whoa, that's weird. So rather than just take somebody's word for it, because you can pretty much create anything and put it on video these days, I actually did it myself. I used Google Earth, and I went to the Martian location where these giant doors are. In fact, they're so big, I think they look like, in a way, if you think back about like hangar doors for aircraft, except these are leading in directly into the ground. But they're big, they're rectangular, excuse me. And they are clearly artificial. I mean, and the thing is, they're all on a straight line too. There's at least 7 of them on a straight line. And you can see they've been partially covered over using a digital tool, which in Photoshop it's called the clone tool, where you just copy okay, imagine I'm in a digital area here, like, okay, folks. So if you copy with the tool, I could literally drag a copy of this and pull it over my face, like these lights, I could just pull it over my face, and now part of my head would be gone. That's what they did. Somebody did this, okay? It doesn't happen by accident. It's not an artifact, of creating a digital map, not by any stretch of the imagination. So as I'm looking at these things on Mars, I started writing page 2, thinking, okay, there's a connection here. This is all based, somehow it leads back to Google or Google Earth / Mars. Then I thought, you know what, it also has a function to go to the moon. So I thought, why not? I'll take a look and see if there's anything similar, because I knew there was lava tubes on the moon that NASA had said that eventually they would go there and probably use to some extent for habitats. They said they would do the same thing on Mars, so why not the moon? Anyway, I ended up, and this is how page 3 came about, is I went to, using Google Earth, I went to the moon, and specifically, if anybody wants to go there, you can see it on page 3. You can see exactly where it is, but I'll just tell you roughly. The coordinates are between the Sea of Crisis and the Sea of Tranquility. Coincidentally, I mean, this is appropriate, right? Because in that little stretch just south of those two Maria, there are incredible doorways that look exactly like the ones on Mars, if in fact even more complex in their geometry and their construction, but the same size, enormous, big enough that you could fly something in there, okay? That was why I was trying to get to the hangar thing. They're so big that they're literally hundreds of feet wide openings, right? So if you had a ship that was 100 feet or so, it would be no problem to land it in. It just goes straight through, because it looks like they're wide open, to me anyway. And again, identically, on the moon, you see that somebody has used a clone tool and literally dragged, an area over it, only partially. So imagine, folks, if this is the door, the rectangular door, somebody at Google had only partially covered the area. So the rest of it is still visible, which again, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not trying to say I understand why they did this or did it so badly, because when they digitally removed the artifacts in the Central Pacific, they're just gone. Oh, but they're still visible on Apple Map and Bing, which is Microsoft. Okay, so the objects are still there. It's just that they've been removed from visually. They've been removed from the Google Earth map. All right. So as I'm looking at these doorways on the moon and wondering how everybody missed that at this point, right? I started looking again. I was thinking lava tubes when I was originally going there. And as I zoomed in on what I thought were lava tubes, look, let's be clear. I'm sure there are lava tubes on the moon, okay? But there's something else there too. And I can see why people might think that they're looking at a lava tube until you actually zoom in. And again, this is something Google Earth has provided us a tool. But they're not really living up to their full, they're playing games here. Somebody's playing games. It's not just NASA, because you can see on every Google Earth map, they literally source where the data comes from, the different government agencies that they source in order to create these composite maps of Earth, Moon, and Mars. So, and then you've seen this, Alfred, and it boggles my mind too, because I thought this can't be, this absolutely can't be right, and I tried to think this through. The geometry of these buildings looks like looks like to me like they're blown up. Somebody blew them up, probably in an aerial attack. And again, you've got them stretched out along one kind of a straight line, and they all look so similar. Almost identical in their construction. They have to have been built by the same agency at a date uncertain. I really don't know. That's still unclear. But they look ancient, okay? And they're very near where Apollo 15 and Apollo 17 landed. So, and this is a well-mapped area, okay? So I'm sure that somebody here on Earth already knows about this. They just, for some reason, aren't telling us that these things exist. I lost your hearing. I lost your audio.
Yeah. So, are you saying that with regard to Google Map or any Google related map, either Google Mars, Google Earth on Moon, or the Google Earth in the South Pacific, there you're finding a lot of psyops or disinformation or artifact fraud as to those three?
Yeah, they're doing everything. They're making stuff disappear or partially covering it over. And in the case of Malibu, it looks like they've added something there. When you tilt it, you're getting a completely different thing that doesn't even exist. It's like it's a facade. It's a deception.
Yeah. What's very interesting is, and we're going to post your the links to your articles in the news article that we post with the links in the video description to this interview, so people can go and exactly see that.
Great.
And so and I'm just looking at the various photos, and it seems to me like it's now the correlation that I can make, or one possible correlation that I can make, is this. We just finished a series of seven panels on the subject of artificial intelligence, inorganic
Right.
artificial intelligence. Part of the panel specifically dealt with evidence of an off-planet sentient artificial intelligence that appears to be, it's plasma-based and appears to be invading this planet. And to make a long story short, I mean, this is long, by long story, I mean hours of panel.
Yeah.
It is being promoted through various human organizations and memes and thought forms and technologies, loosely called the transhumanist agenda.
Right.
Which is sort of the front that the artificial intelligence or AI is taking.
Right.
That includes the internet, all of the computer companies, etc. And one of the lead companies whose artificial intelligence director is Ray Kurzweil is Google.
Right.
And in fact, so it's as though Google itself is a company that has been taken over by the AI entrained forces or the AI entrained humans. That is, just to put it down in black and white, really simplistically, this is absolutely simplistically, it's as though humans are tending to go over to become AI entrained robotoids, or soul and divine soul and soul embedded bioavatars. That seems to be a competition, and there's a competition for that as to on the planet. And
right.
And this AI was left as sort of a terraforming a terraforming weapon or agent to take over the planet on behalf of AIs. Now, and it seems to be taking over Google. So, or there's a pitched battle going on, and Ray Kurzweil and all of that, and the year of the singularity at 2045. So that it doesn't surprise me that you have this, what we on the human side of things, that is the soul-based side of things, would see chaotic and fraud-based behavior. Because once you go into AI, all concepts of justice, human morality, human standards kind of go out the window.
You forgot emotions?
Yeah,
empathy.
Emotions, just empathy.
Yeah.
Its objective is to overtake the planet and make the planet an AI planet. So, and what we found is two characteristics of the AI. Number one is deception.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it hates being exposed.
Of course, because it's not self-created, Alfred. Somebody had to create that program. And that somebody is, I sent you the article about Malibu being an epicenter of evil.
Uh-huh.
You and I have talked about this before, about my encounter with a being of light up in Malibu in 1985, who said he was the father. He didn't tell me the rest of the story. It took me almost 30 years to figure out who he really is. He is the father of the Archons. The reason he was confronting me, I thought he was there to help. At least I was hoping he was coming to my aid at that moment. But in fact, he was confronting me because I was confounding his plans, his agenda. Specifically that day, it was just that boy and his grandparents who were traumatized and emitting a dark energy that the Archons feed off of. Not only the little parasites, but he himself, Enki, as known, Enki, Lucifer, Ea, Jupiter. He's known by so many different names, okay? But the reason he's called the light bearer is because he is a radiant being. He has this ability, or some component of his character is he emits a tremendous amount of light. Okay, so, but he's also mad. he is mad. He suffers from multiple personalities.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then again, that was a different article I sent you called The Birth of the Archons. I didn't write that per se. It was handed to me back in '86 when I was first when I encountered him and I was having these weird experiences in Malibu. A friend gave me this book written by a friend of my dad, and it talked about, how Lucifer went insane when he went into a specific location in space that was off limits. He and his crew went in there. They were so badly traumatized that they literally, their personality, their psyche just split into multiples. They're called alters. We call them alters, okay?
Mhm.
Or echoes. That's what I'm talking about. When this happens to humans, this is what we call it now. So their psyche was literally shattered, and when they found their way out of there, they were not only deranged and dangerous, but they had unintentionally created these mental parasites. So they were now infected by this and affected by the trauma. So when they got out of there, they started attacking their own kind and destroying worlds, and they had lost their ability to create with their consciousness as gods, and they started to they were like the first scientists. They couldn't create matter, so they would manipulate it, and that's where the machines come in. This whole artificiality that we are talking about here and seeing manifest, it's not new. He brought it here. They brought it here a long time ago as part of the expansion of their illegitimate empire. Okay, so a lot of what I'm telling you, I learned only recently, in the last couple of years, as I was reading something called the Wes Penray papers.
Oh, yes.
He used to be the editor of Illuminati News, and then I guess he after a while he stopped doing it. But Wes is a very intelligent guy. He seems to know things that most people are missing, including myself. And as I read through his hundreds and hundreds of pages of research, it became clear to me that the being I met is Lucifer, and that he is the one that is the father of the archons. He likes to think he's the father of mankind. He also likes to pretend he's the savior. He's also a shapeshifter, and he's transdimensional. So it's like what we're dealing with here is something very tricky, very clever, but also very cruel. He's a psychopath, okay, and so are the people around him, and that's the problem. They're the ones that created the machines and the artificial intelligence, basically to do their bidding. And this was all shown to us in the movie The Matrix as an analogy, okay? And they need us, as I've told you before and on this show. They need us on many levels, otherwise they would have destroyed us a long time ago. So part of the original process here as an experiment was divinely inspired by a goddess that the Gnostics called Sophia. They tried, it's funny how everything gets twisted around. I mean, it's not funny, it's ironic, but it's also sad. They've tried to blame her for the birth of the archons, and that's not the case at all, but I mean, that's just the way it is. So she originally, as the queen of Orion, the basic Orion Empire thing again, she and her son, I think he was her first son, Prince Enlil, came here, and they literally created a garden paradise. All life was symbiotic. There was, and they were hermaphrodite too. Interesting, combination of things. And they were telepathic. They also had the ability to biolocate in a sense, it was like remote viewing on steroids. Okay, it was really quite simple for those beings to just literally project themselves at a great distance. So there was a lot of things that were being tried here with her DNA that she created. Not in a laboratory. She manifested it with her consciousness. This is what gods do. It's what mad scientists do is build stuff in a laboratory and unleash it on everybody. Okay. So, but none of that existed up until, let's just call it the fall, because I think most people with a religious background would understand the fall that most people think of, the heavens, the war in the heavens. What I'm giving you an alternative explanation for how that happened and how it all relates back to where we're at now, why all the deception, why all the destruction, is because they do not want to admit that what they've done, and they don't want us to know because we will be much harder to control, and they know that. they know that for a fact, that if everybody was to be informed as to, how this happened and why, that we would rebel. I mean, resistance is not futile. It's part of the human nature. We were never created to be imprisoned, enslaved, and lied to our entire existence. That's not who we are. That's not, look, it's like this. When a tree bears fruit, right? There's always a familial connection, right? An orange tree is always going to create oranges. Well, we have some of that divine DNA in us. In our spirit, it has been so badly damaged over like hundreds of thousands of years here. This has been going on. And it's not just here, by the way. This, Enki's empire, the Luciferian empire, which is in direct competition with his family, the Orion Empire, is a gigantic galactic civil war that's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. It's like a 9-dimensional chess game. But most of us here are just pawns to them, but not all of us, okay? And I was almost knocked off the board, back in 1990. I mean, I survived what happened in '85, but that was hardly the end of it. In 1990, I don't think I told you this, but I was under assault by an artificial life form. Yeah, it literally called me up. Okay, and at the time I was learning about what Dr. Beater from Washington D.C. I don't know if you ever heard of his audio letters, but he was a lawyer in Washington, D.C. He was talking about the development of these robotoids, cyborgs, all right, that this android thing has been going on. This was back in the 80s. He was very popular, but by the time I got to it, it was 1990, and I was listening to him, and I was thinking about it and trying to put this together, and I literally I was losing hope for humanity at that point. And even for myself, I thought there's no agency that you can call to deal with this, right? Everybody's in denial. And if all these artificial things are going on in the background, abductions and androids and stuff, is like, as a young man, I started thinking, this is really nuts. I mean, what are we going to do about it? And as I was laying in bed, I was actually very ill that day. I had some, bronchitis. And I was having trouble breathing, okay? So, and I was laying in bed, and I kept thinking to myself, I am not sorry for looking into this. I have a right to know what's going on. This is my planet, this is my future. Why wouldn't I want to know the truth? And as I was thinking that, I'm not sorry business, right? I got a phone. The phone started ringing. I picked up the phone, and there was a voice, a mechanical sounding voice, and there was machine stuff going on in the background. I could hear that, and it was speaking to me in a language that I've never heard before. And as you know, I've been to 58 countries in my life so far. I've heard a lot of different languages in my life. I never heard that before. And for sure it sounded artificial in the sense like mechanical. But the thing was, I couldn't tell what it was. I couldn't understand the words, but I got the impression that it was angry. And I assume it was angry at me. The other thing that was weird is when I picked it up, there was no greeting, nothing. It was already in mid-sentence, and it was having a stream of it was in the mid-sentence, and it wouldn't shut up. It was just talking to me, or it's just talking, and I'm listening intently, like, what in the hell's going on here? And then the only thing I could say was, I'm sorry. And then I hung up the phone, and it was still talking, whatever was going on there, I hung up the phone, and then I thought, oh my God, that is exactly what it got me to do something that I didn't, it was a complete opposite. I was thinking, I'm not sorry. Then I said, I'm sorry. It's like, wait a minute, what is this, And it was like the straw that broke my back. It literally, I lost hope. I really did, and I was planning to commit suicide. Okay, why am I telling you this? Because obviously I didn't, right? Well, my plan, I felt compelled to go to Malibu and go up on top of the mountain where those ancient ruins are and just jump off. That was my impulse. Okay, apparently, and this is what I've been working on, is this whole problem. What is going on in Malibu? Why is I call it an epicenter of evil? Because it's a base. It's a Luciferian base, and it has been for hundreds of thousands of years. That's why so many people commit suicide. That's why the Native Americans were genocide there for the thousands. It's like it looks like such a beautiful place, okay? And on the surface it is, but you got problems there. Like that place is really screwed up, right?
And it's funny because mal, both in French and Spanish, means evil.
That like maladjusted. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and it is that. Okay, but here's what happened. So a friend of mine came over and he said, it's just kind of unintended consequence. My friend didn't know what was going on. He came over. He said, "Hey, you want to go camping at this location? It's very similar to Malibu in the sense it's Central California, right on the San Andreas Fault. It's called Pinnacles National Monument. It has these beautiful sandstone cliffs, right? Bluffs, whatever." I thought, okay, fine. That'll be a good enough places. I'll just go there and jump off the cliff. No big deal. I was done at that point. I really was. And when I was there that night, I had a lucid dream where I woke up exactly where I was, okay? One of those things, right? I wake up and I saw someone off in the distance. So I was curious. I went towards this person and I saw that it was a woman. She was wearing some sort of unusually sheer kind of greenish, like a toga kind of thing. Anyway, in any case, she was unusual, very unusual looking, and we didn't exchange greetings or anything. I just looked at her and she said to me, "If you decide to stay, we will do everything we can to help you," which was odd to say the least, because I was really, that's exactly what I was looking for. Was I had lost all hope, and here she's giving me hope. I don't know. At the time, I really didn't know what she was talking about. We will help you, all right? But it sounded good. It sounded good, okay? And I don't remember saying anything to her, but I must have been thinking, well, if that's the case, then okay, I'll stay. Next thing she said, she held out her hand, and there was this most unusual crystal I've ever seen. I collect crystals. I've always been fascinated by rocks. And anyway, she held out her hand. She's holding this crystal, and she says, "Place your hand on the crystal." And I thought, oh, to me, that's like, oh, that's a treat, Okay, fine. And when I did that, there was this rush of energy like I've never felt before. It was unbelievable. It was like jump starting a car, and it shocked me to the core of my being. I don't think she was trying to be cruel or malicious. And only recently did I figure out what that was that she was holding. In the Sumerian epics, the Anunnaki have something called the Me, M-E, but it's pronounced Me, okay? Those are the tablets of destiny, these incredible stones that are used for communications, weapon systems, healing, etc., right? I was really surprised when I was watching the movie, one of these crazy movies, Marvel movies, the Avengers, with you've got Enki and Loki from Asgard, right? They have something called the Tesseract. It's this bluish crystal, right? And it opens up portals. That's what it was. That's what it is. If you actually look at a Tesseract, it's like it's a three-dimensional object that has a fourth-dimensional component. It's quite astounding, okay? Because when I saw it in this fictional setting, I'm thinking, oh, that's, But then I realized, I started thinking, going, wait a minute, that looks really familiar, So I did some research, and then there it is, okay? Finally, it took, again, it's one of those things, like 20, 30 years seems like a long time to us as humans, right? In this current condition, it's nothing. It's nothing. In the bigger scheme of things, it's nothing. It's like it's blink of an eye. Literally, in the bigger scheme. So, especially to these gods that are immortal, semi-immortal, whatever. So, I'm just trying to say that through my persistence, and some assistance from these good guys, because there are good guys out there still. Good guys in the sense of, I know that's a very misleading statement. What I'm trying to say is there are beings, divine beings, that have not become infected or affected by the Luciferian rebellion. The archons have no influence over them. They're still free of the infection. So they are truly still divine. So when we encounter these beings, and it is rare because they're not welcome here, even though they're the ones that originally set up the colony here, this garden experiment, this living life, what Wes calls it, a living library of DNA, which is amazing. If you ever look at a cell, it's like an entire city. DNA is a huge component. DNA is the software that runs the hardware. Okay, but who wrote it? Well, it wasn't Lucifer. It was his mother, the goddess. And that's the thing. That's the thing. He's a divine being too. This is the really screwed up part about it. He's very smart, and he's very cunning too. I mean, at the same time, he has a presence because he was a divine being for most of his life until he fell into this illness. And as I've told you before about these archons, it's like, they're like rabid dogs in the sense that, they weren't always like this. Once they became infected, they became dangerous. They don't communicate well. They feel no emotion. They're just like, they just turn on you, right? For reasons that we don't understand because it's irrational. Okay, you can't rationalize something like this because it's completely irrational. There is no logical thought to it. It's more of like a reflex. It's a survival thing. They just want to feed off of that negative energy so that they can survive. So in a sense, it's a desperation. Yeah, I think some of them might actually enjoy it, but they can't. The really sad part is they can't get out of it. They've lost their ability to be creative and compassionate and loving. So they're stuck in this mode. You can see it. In fact, it's becoming worse here. And most people don't said to me anyway, it's incomprehensible. Why are they doing this to us? What is the goal? Well, again, going back to what Wes Penray has said, is that the agenda is to upgrade us to a point where we can be used to help him attack we call it the court. At the heart of the Orion Empire, they have the court, right? The royal court. Apparently, it's very well protected, and supposedly because many of us still have a component of the DNA of the queen in us, we can be used to crack open or hijack spear point way for this next assault on the Orion Empire, on their headquarters, their government base, whatever you want to call it, okay? And it's curious to me because it kind of makes sense. I mean, look, I can't prove any of this. A lot of it is still, I think, speculation. But look, somebody built these things. Somebody destroyed them. Somebody's been lying to us for eons, okay? So we have to engage in this kind of questioning just to even begin to have a dialogue about what in the world is going on and why.
Right. So you would say that there's a Star Wars still going on, or?
Yeah, I do. And now here's the other thing. Most people say, okay, from a religious standpoint, people say, oh, his pride. It was all about his pride is what led him to cause the war in the heavens. And Wes kind of plays it out like that too. But he's more specific. He said Enlil is the current prince. His father is also named Enlil. It's more of a title, all right? Mm-hmm. But they're not the head of the empire. It's the queen. The queen. Think about this. I get what I said. In chess, the most powerful piece on the board is the queen. In life, if you look at the British Empire, guess what? You see the same thing, all right? It's the queen is really the one. Main reason is because she's the creator, or the creatrix, whatever I can't even say that. The creatrix. She's the one that creates life. She's the one that gives life, all right? But there is no bloodline for the royal family unless you have a queen. All right? So that's part of the component there that most people are not thinking about. But in any case, her son, Enki, Lucifer, was supposed to ascend to the kingship. But after he went insane, they said, we can't let you do that. You know, that would be irresponsible to the extreme. And he said, well, then screw you. I'm going to go create my own empire, which he did. And it is illegitimate. Okay. And it's also very warlike and highly manipulative. And in order to expand, part of the thing they did was to use science to create things that we now see as artificial. And they are. They're completely artificial. But there is a difference here. Like I said, how does anything become manifest? Really, our being is a direct result of something creating, right? And I know I've told you this before, but for anybody who hasn't heard this, I've got to say it again. Creation, manifestation of all matter, starts with consciousness. Consciousness is a wave form. Okay, that wave form can take 3 different phase states that we know of, which is it's either consciousness, energy, or matter. Just like a drop of water can be a solid, a liquid, or a gas, depending on its phase state. Literally means the vibratory rate of the molecules, right? It'll be solid, liquid, or gas. The same is true for consciousness. Those waves, depending on the vibratory rate of the wave, it will either be consciousness, energy, or matter. So, thoughts are important. Our thoughts, our emotions are extremely important, because in our original state, in the higher state, the thoughts manifest into physicality. I mean, it really happens that way anyway, but everything's been so screwed up in this particular region we're in. It's not just the planet Earth that's under AI control. It's an entire quadrant. It's like a giant cube. This is the way Wes describes it, and the whole thing is being run by an artificial intelligence that was put into place by Enki, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, the father. One of the things that Sitchin tried to do anyway in his writings was portray Enki as a victim. I don't know if you must have read Sitchin's work, right?
Yeah, parts of it. And I even saw his supposed grave site at Adam's calendar. I mean, I don't believe that, but that's what some people were.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think he's dead at all. In fact, well, he's obviously, and here's the thing, he does have family, those who are still divine, and then after he went crazy, he also, not only did he gather people around him, his minions, but he also literally procreated. So he does have a son, and he's had multiple wives, and it's a problem, okay? Because see, some people have asked me, look, if this is true, why doesn't his family just kill him? Well, if you're a parent, that's like the last thing you want to do. If your son or daughter did something horrendous, you're not going to, as a parent, you don't want to kill your own kind. That's just not how it's done. If anything, they've been trying to find a way to rehabilitate or just the situation is really complicated is what I'm trying to say. And in fact, my understanding is we are basically being held hostage here. From his perspective, we're his property. We're his children. He saved us from the flood, even though the truth is, the way I understand it, is the reason the whole flood thing happened is because his family told him, look, you have to destroy the mess you've made. You've created monstrosities through your genetic manipulation and other things. You've created a mess. You have to clean it up, or we're going to come down there and do it for you, whether you like it or not. So he said, okay, I'll clean it up. But you can't trust this guy. You can't. It's weird. Part of him is still good. Part of him is still divine, and yet he's got all these other components going on that are competing internally. So he's partially incoherent. You know, I mean, think about it. You've seen people that have this problem, right? Their personality shifts, or they're talking to like supposedly invisible entities. It's a real issue. So you can't have a rational conversation with somebody like that and expect them to follow through. You know, so that's and he's been in charge. He and his people have been in charge here for at least 400,000 years, messing things up here and within his own little, his own little empire.
Realm,
whatever. But there are these, much like what happened to me, there are these moments where these, I guess he would consider them rebels, his family come down here trying to assist. I mean, they do assist in ways that we don't always fully comprehend. Believe me, it's taken me, you talk about unraveling a Gordian knot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's my life. But it's not, like I said, it's not, I talk about myself only because I'm in it. I'm involved in this just like you and everybody else. It's really, really taking a lot of effort for me to see through the deception.
Right. Now, well, especially if you come upon just, I mean, in very, very recently, this intentional public fraud being carried out by a major player in the transhumanist movement, Google.
Yeah. Well, and that's where page 4 comes in.
Yeah.
I don't mention transhumanism, but I show very clearly that Google was started by the Pentagon, and that it has evolved. I mean, just recently there was a news article that said that the former head of Google is now working with the Pentagon, actually it says Google's now working with the Pentagon. That's a misleading statement, or headline. The truth is they've always been working with the Pentagon from day one. They are the Pentagon. But if you remember my books on Washington, D.C., the whole Pentagon, Washington, D.C. has from its moment of inception, has always been Luciferian.
Right.
Because all the powers on this world serve him under different names, different guises, whatever. The secret societies, they all of them serve him. And once you get to the core, once you peel back the layers of the onion, at the core of it is always the archons. It's always been them. I mean,
yeah. And as I understand it, it's the Orion Greys that are a lot of the underground bases and are a lot of the interdimensionals that have been showing up on July 26, 2002, and then July 26, 1952.
Yeah.
50 years apart. According to our mutual friend at UFO DC, those are Greys. Now, they could be Orion Greys, which takes us back to Orion, and they're in partnership with the Dracos. I'm just going to try to spit it out. And what we found is that the Dracos, there's an alliance between the Dracos, the Orion Greys, the goo, the plasma-based goo, and Israel, the UK, and the US government.
So, you mentioned a lot of things, but yes, here's what I do agree with. You have to take a holistic view of what's happening in order to really understand it. Again, if this is 9-dimensional chess, you can't just focus on one piece. Otherwise, you're going to get wiped out, You have to look at all the different moving components in order to get a feel for what's really happening here. And we give them different names. Part of the thing is that the subterfuge is that they like to use disinformation at all times. They're constantly interjecting, distracting us, especially now with the internet. People are constantly looking at their so-called smart devices, right? And being distracted in that way. But I really feel like that it's hard for us to get a straight answer on this, Alfred. We could speculate a lot. You know, one thing that I do know from my investigation in Washington, D.C. is that they use portals to come here. And the reason I mention that is there doesn't have to be a massive UFO base under Washington, D.C. or out in Malibu, because they have this ability through these portals, either through ships or literally through their person, that they can just pop in and out of here at will. So that's another thing that people need to keep in mind. It's like, well, where are they hiding all this stuff? Well, a lot of it's not even here. You know,
It's in parallel dimensions in the dimensional ecology.
Well, you know, one of the really interesting things I learned from Wes Penray was that this area that we're in, I don't mean just the Earth, but this little quadrant that we're kind of trapped in, we've been captured. A lot of us were, you know, it's like a honey trap. Literally the soul's coming, oh, I'm going to help, you know, and then you're stuck here for, you know, however many incarnations. But this artificial cube that we're in only represents about maybe 4%, 5% of the known universe. And that it's
of this universe.
Yeah. What's really interesting, so he talks about, he says, and this is where it becomes possibly true, is that he says that, you know, our scientists look at the universe and say 96% of it is missing. And where is it? So they say, you know, it's like, well, they call it dark energy or dark matter. But the reality is it's only dark to us because our DNA has been so badly tampered with. We're essentially blind, okay? If this is infrared to ultraviolet, we only see this much, right? On a good day, we're only seeing a tiny, narrow portion of what we know for sure exists, okay? So when we look out there with our you know, damaged DNA, try to sense it with our limited machinery, it looks dark to us. But in fact, when I was out of body in 1985, just before I was confronted by him, what I saw was everything was light. Everything is light. So it may just be, ironically, that what we think of as dark is actually light, and that we can't perceive in our current state. It's just dark to us.
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, yeah. So part of the thing that's going on here is the control with frequencies. It seems that, for me anyway, and I think this is true for everybody, is like we were talking about waves of consciousness. So like when I have a really profound out-of-body experience in the Great Pyramid, that was 1975, it was because of the tone that was coming out of the stone box. The tour guide hit it with the mallet and it just rang. The whole thing reverberated like a tuning fork, and that caused me to go out of body. So the same thing happened 10 years later on top of the mountain. I was chanting, I was using Om, okay? And I was using that to vibrate my body, my soul, whatever was like, it's almost like, you know how you stoke a fire, you just blow on it, you just breath and the fire goes up. That's what I feel like is going on here when we certain frequencies can literally enliven us, you know, stoke our divine fire. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because when I've been, you know, one of the ways that I get help and answers is to mentally project out there and try to connect with these beings, these various beings. And I asked them, I said, first of all, why is it taking so long? And the answer was, because we're immortal. We're immortal. 1,000 years for us is like, I mean, 1,000 years for you is like a day for us. So there's that issue. But also they said, or at least the message I got back was that one of the contingency plans that they have to help rectify this issue is what our scientists call a super wave. So I didn't even know that name existed until I was reading Wes Penray's papers, and he was talking about this, but not. I mean, it was parallel to what I had seen or been shown about what's coming. Okay, and I have subsequently found other people talking about it as well, scientists and mystics as well. there's a few people that are very, very clear about the fact that at some point there's this huge wave of energy that's going to sweep over the planet. When that happens, it will awaken the divine fires in us in a way that everybody is going to suddenly see exactly what's going on, whether they like it or not. And believe me, some people are not going to like this at all. They're going to be really upset when they suddenly, it's like they've been sleepwalking all their life, and then they're suddenly awake and go, "Oh my God!" It's harsh.
Right. Are you talking about the galactic superwaves?
Yeah. Well, okay. Look, we don't know where supposedly comes from the galactic center, but we don't know what causes them, right? And like there's a physicist, I think his name is Dr. Paul Violette.
Paul
Violette.
Paul LaViolette. Yeah, we've interviewed him.
All right. So yes, he's talked about this as being a destructive force on the planet. Personally, that's not what I saw. What I saw was actually a very benevolent, merciful thing that was going to literally, it's not about an ascension, okay? This is an awakening. This is going to happen so fast, and there's nothing that the Archon, the artificial intelligence, all that's going to be overridden in our souls, in our spirits, in our psyche. Suddenly everybody is going to wake up. Now, the problem is at that point, they're going to have to make a decision. Because here's the really tricky part about all this. Legally, in a court of law, if somebody agrees to something, right, even though it's against, let's say somebody stole your property, right? If you agreed with them on any level, if you sign a piece of paper and they can show to the court, hey, you agreed to this. Well, you don't have a legal leg to stand on. The same thing is true with the Court of Orion. A lot of us have agreed. We were tricked into doing it, but a lot of us have agreed to go along with Enki or Lucifer's agenda, and we've been, whether we know it or not, that's one of the reasons we're stuck in this mess. So, in other words, we've lost our sovereignty. We literally gave it up. That's the so-called deal with the devil. He's really good at tricking people into doing that, and there's a reason for it. He knows the legality of all of this stuff, even though he is crazy. He's not stupid. There's a difference. Okay, he's not stupid. He's insane. So when people have that awakening, and I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but apparently this has been predicted for decades and it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know when it's going to arrive, but I'm absolutely sure it will happen. When it happens, people will suddenly see things for what they really are, and they're going to have to make a decision. Do they want to continue willingly to serve the Archon agenda, or do they want to come back into the divine? Right. So that's a huge choice, right? And it's not something people would do lightly. And it's like right now it's just an intellectual exercise that we're discussing. But when it happens, it's going to be profound. The implications are, I feel, permanent for everyone. When you make that choice at that point, it's irrevocable. So those people are going to be stuck for quite a long time, unless at some point they choose to do differently. I mean, free will is in play here, and yet it's being violated all the time, right?
Yeah, I just like to bring our conversation also back to your article, and maybe just kind of read from a couple of short paragraphs and then ask you to comment on it. You write, on January 25th, 2015, Nafez Ahmed of Insurance Intelligence reported that, quote, the United States intelligence community funded, nurtured, and incubated Google as part of a drive to dominate the world through control of information. Seed funded by the NSA and CIA, Google was merely the first among a plethora of private sector startups co-opted by U.S. intelligence to retain information superiority. And then on March 3rd, 2016, Sputnik News featured the following headline, which is very misleading. because Google is not joining forces with the Pentagon. It was part of the Pentagon from its inception.
Right.
This would explain why Google Earth is either blacking out, pixelating, or digitally deleting sensitive areas of its Earth, Moon, Mars maps. And the headline is Pentagon, Google join forces to advance U.S. military hegemony capacity. So, you know, here we are, we're on Earth, but it looks like the Pentagon and Google are trying to create this artificial environment around us by faking all of these NASA maps.
Well, it's not, okay, again, what you see on Google Earth is actually a composite of multiple agencies. NASA is just one of them. So I think that's one of the reasons where you actually get a little bit of a bleed through where certain things are not fully covered over. In other words, there's too many people involved for it to be utterly 100% controlled or contained. Somebody, look, they're playing games, all right, and they're not being honest with us, but somehow the information that I provided in those articles using Google Earth and the internet, I feel is accurate. In fact, it sounds better when you read it because look, I digested that. It took me almost 2 months to write, to come to the point where I could write that because I did a lot of research. I had to study it and then digest it down. So it's a little more accurate. But, here's the problem, Alfred, and this is one of the reasons I want to talk to you is because, and your audience, is because people don't take the time to really read and analyze what they read these days. We've been conditioned now. Everybody has supposedly some like, to a various degrees, ADD, right? Attention Deficit Disorder. and even more so now that everybody's got the smart device, with the light shining in their face like all the time. We are utterly distracted. And so sometimes it's best, I feel, to get the word out, you have to use this medium. Visually, audibly, it's easier for people. They just look at it and say, oh, really? Wow. And they'll probably forget it 5 minutes from now because there's something else going on, right? Something, Kardashian-like is going on and distracting them.
Well, this is, I'll just put in this brief note.
Go ahead.
The invading AI is plasma-based.
Right.
The internet and its technology is plasma-based.
Yes.
The smartphone screen is plasma-based.
Yeah.
The reason why all the folks are glued to the screen is not the power of the information, it's the power of the AI.
Yeah.
The folks are AI trained because 80 to 100% of humans now have breathed in the nanobots through the chemtrails, which are now been gone into their brains and become implants that are activated by the AI through HARP, through supercomputers, and through the plasma in the phones. Over to you.
Yeah, I don't argue with any of that. It's that and more, okay? Because you have, like I said, you've got these archons that have created a lot of mischievous devices, but they're also accompanied by these mental parasites. So everybody's being, to some level, affected by this. Most of us are infected by these mental parasites, okay? I had somebody contact me recently, said he was doing so-called paranormal investigations where he was recording, on voices, okay? The so-called ghosts or whatever. He said at first they were friendly, then they became malicious. He turned it off, and then he started hearing them in his head. Electronic schizophrenia, okay? It's real, okay? There's a lot of different ways this stuff can be passed around, and it has an etheric, spiritual, physical, mental, it's all of this is in play. Like I said, it's a 9-dimensional, that's why I keep saying it's like 9-dimensional chess. But okay, so as far as plasma, yes, they call it electric blood, and the Pentagon's been using this for a while in their Cray computers, where and this is going to be common knowledge soon, or I should say, it'll be universally. All the new smart technology is going to have a plasma circuitry built into it so that it can deliver power and take heat out of the circuitry. So you're going to, and this is the final step or phase of implementing or integrating AI into our life. But it's not for our benefit. I know they always sell it to us like it's a, this is a great thing. Kurzweil, in my, I call him Kurzweil, because he curses us every time he opens his mouth or writes something. He's cursing humanity, but he thinks he's doing it for our own good. There's a case of somebody who's clearly possessed and doesn't even know it. So
Exactly.
This is a really big issue, and I feel bad on one level being a spokesperson, because I feel like I'm the bearer of bad news when I talk about this stuff. But we have to have this discussion. It's the only way we're going to get well, is to admit that there's a problem, that there's this illness, and we're all being affected to some degree by this.
Exactly. I agree with you, and this has to be exposed, and people have to become aware of it, because the antidote is the soul-based and love-based humanity.
Yes, and I've written 3 articles about the archons, and that was the final one, of the antidote for the archons. And there's some good graphics in there. And I highly recommend anybody who's interested, just go to unicusmagazine.com and click on articles. And it's in there, antidote for archons. But generally speaking, if anybody who's peaceful, creative, loving, and stays really, calm, you have to stay calm. There's a reason for that, is because whenever we're agitated or distracted like that, we're more easily manipulated. We can't think straight. And also, like I said, what they want from us is trauma. They want us to traumatize ourselves or others so that they can feed. I know that I keep repeating that, but it's true. That is, and I'm not being overly simplistic. That's a survival instinct that they have, and that's their real motivation here. It isn't just. I know when I say chess, people think, oh, it's a game. No, it's not a game. Unless you think survival is a game. I don't. I think everybody takes it very seriously. That's the only game in town as far as I know. But we are being manipulated. Most of us don't have any clue about this.
Well, let me ask you a serious question.
Go ahead.
Do you think that people watching this video, reading the article, looking at the evidence themselves, should then take up their pen and paper and start writing their legal representatives, be they their congresspeople, be they their MPs if they're in England, be they their Japanese member of the Diet, because Google is worldwide, pointing out to their government representatives, to their press, what this AI monster that's global is doing, is committing fraud, and pointing your article and our interview as evidence. Isn't that what our readers should start doing?
That's one thing. Sure, that's a possibility.
That's always how change starts being.
It is. It is. But okay. Again, since we're talking about multiple dimensions here, right? That's one level. Okay, sure, I agree with that. Yes, we should contest this. All right, because it is illegal on some level, whether it be in the books or not. It's a violation of our free will, because those artifacts belong to us. They're part of our heritage that's being withheld from us. That's a crime against humanity, among many that we could list here. But as far as taking action, I have very little faith in government, religion. I don't adhere to any of that. I'm not saying you can't participate for positive purposes, but I don't have any faith.
What if Google becomes a universal object of disbelief and ridicule on the internet?
Okay.
It loses its credibility, and
I agree.
It can't rule the internet anymore. People say Google it. If that becomes like garbage,
Yeah, well, okay. So, all right, since you mentioned it, let's focus on this. One of the things that I wrote in my article, which I thought was just fascinating, and then I think it's germane to this conversation, is that their motto, their corporate, uh, what is it? The corporate conduct. Their motto for their corporate conduct corporate code of conduct was "Don't be evil." All right, until the end of last year, when they created a subsidiary company called Alphabet, which is now a holding company that's going to gobble up all these other companies, right, with their magic and money. So now Google dropped that motto as of last year. There's no more, so and I asked this rhetorical question: does that mean now that they're free to be evil? It's not funny, okay? That's not supposed to be a joke. This is a question that has to be asked, and I think you're right to focus it back on this entity, this corporate entity, because in law, and you know this better than most people at being a lawyer. The law has been written in such a way that corporations are considered entities, and they're given the status of an individual even though it's a collective. So again, these are games that are being played, not for our benefit either, by the way. This is all to protect the illegitimate empire that has been created not only here but beyond. Again, it's all about control, deception. Mainly, it's about survival.
Oh, and it has to do with memes.
Yeah.
One of the memes that when, about a number of months ago when we first started doing our panels on artificial intelligence, and, this again is in the kind of, you have to be humorous about it, but I really think that we exposed Google a bit and exposed the AI, is that what they call this, what they call the plasma that the AI is embedded in is black goo, right?
Yeah.
It's a black goo. So isn't it interesting that the leading AI entrainment company is called Google?
Yes. That's
Google.
a good connection.
Google.
Yes. Yeah.
So now they say, oh, that's because it's on a Googleplex. And
Right.
and that's what I thought when Google was first getting off the ground back in the 90s. They were in Palo Alto or something, and they said, oh, offer us suggestions, and I contacted them and I said, oh, why don't you do this way? And they sent me a note. And they have this thing, we're on the edge of information science. But what if that was just a Masonic AI shield, and what they really were, because they've been playing, if you go to our history in the panels, you'll see that the black goo was behind the Falklands War, it was behind the BP oil spill. The black goo has been a hidden actor behind a lot of wars and bad stuff.
Okay.
And maybe Google is like, it's like the secret password. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like an icon.
Yeah.
It is. Really, it's iconic in the sense that it's. Oh God! In religion, you would put an icon, a religious icon up there, and one image had all these connotations coming at you, right? So yeah.
And now in the internet, which we've shown that the internet in metabiology is like a big fungus on the planet, and a cancer is a fungus, and what the internet is, it's the AI fungus for part of the AI entrainment of humans, for those unconscious humans that choose to go into the AI entrainment rather than stay with the soul and love entrainment. So Google, everybody's worshiping Google. So you have provided, I want to affirm your life mission here. You have once again busted Google big time, and it's Google with a G-O-O.
Yeah. Well, again, look, Alfred, I didn't intend. I would have never done this if they hadn't literally been so blatantly in my face, just taking something away, like, oh, you don't need to, you don't really see this. It's not important. Just you know what I mean? So here, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking back about one of the episodes of Star Trek. The Archons, they literally called them the Archons. It was, they got to this place, and there was the people were all controlled by a computer. That was Roddenberry's version of the Archon. Was literally it's so weird. I'm seeing visuals of this now, and I never really put it together until I just listening to you talking. It was like sudden popped in my head. Oh yeah, Gene Roddenberry must have known. He was obviously informed on some level that this is what's being but look, the AI is not 100% autonomous. It's not self-created. It does. Right. It is the whole concept of robot means a mechanical slave, right? So the AI, even though it's considered an intelligence, it's still playing it's still considered in some ways a slave. It's a servant, and that's really what worship is all about. That's the other thing people don't understand. I think most people don't get it. Religion, like government, is a means for the archons to divide us and control us. And I mean that across the board. That's why I do not. It's not that I believe in God, and I'm a very spiritual guy, but my observation of religion is it was all contrived by the same individuals. These same gods created and have recreated themselves multiple times under different guises, but it's always the same deal. They compel us to be cruel to one another and kill each other and do stupid things in their name, right? For what? It's not serving any purpose that we can think of unless you realize that they're parasitic. Okay, and so I don't know if you've seen the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp.
I may have.
And he creates an AI, and that basically starts running amok. It's going to take over the entire world. It has this nanotechnology component, so it's AI, nanotech, transcendence. It's really creepy.
Right.
Okay, but at some point he's trying to sell it to people, saying, "Oh, look, it can heal people, it can make them smarter, stronger." and then they're pretty soon they're not even human anymore.
Right.
Okay, so it's in our face. Like every day I see this. Even on the Drudge Report, I see it like every day. There's something about AI or robotics, and how humanity is basically, we're all going to be out of a job soon, or we'll be working for a robot.
Well, that's, you see, in some of my articles, I've been pointing out that I believe that Kurzweil, who says that 2045 is the singularity, i.e. when AI and humanity will be equal.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that 2015 was the surge year. Was the true surge year of AI.
I think you're right.
And that 2045 is a fake out. That's an AI deception.
Yeah.
Because, Kurzweil and Google are working for AI. So
right.
they are taking over now. And Jade Helm was an AI.
Right.
And all the Paris false flag, so that we knew that in 2015, 2015 was when the AI came out in public, and that's when in 2015 the American public found out in public, oh, an AI runs the Americas. And then in the fall of 2015 is when Europe found out that an AI runs Europe, and that's how they ran the Paris false flag, and Brussels and all of that. It was all false flag. And then the 2016 U.S. election is the first election openly run by an AI, with the leading Republican contender being an AI and trained robotoid. All you have to do is turn on your TV, and you will see it in action.
Well, now wait. Okay. What about that information I sent you about Hillary Clinton in that interview where she said she's a robot?
No, both of these. Look,
Yeah. Okay. Both sides.
I,
All right. I agree with
I,
that.
I think that this is a sham.
No,
This is
you're
not.
okay.
This is the 2016 election is
Mm.
a sham. It's not an election. First of all, through secret CIA time travel, they knew the outcome in 1971. We know that through Andy Basiago whistleblower. It's been proved. And so they've Donald Trump is he is through Resorts International. He's the front man for the CIA, the mob, and the Mossad in gambling and in Las Vegas. That's his thing, right? And in the international hotels. I mean, a billionaire through licensing his name, give me a break, who then decides to run for president with no platform, who gets up and just dribbles the same stuff over and over again, who gets all free airtime, who gets up and his platform is, I'm going to build the 40-foot wall with Mexico. I mean, this whole thing is so absurd, is that they dreamed it up in the CIA PSYOP lab, right? And they figured out that they would get the race to the bottom Americans, go to the lowest edge of the limbic system, get that 30%, give them all the airtime, and then just run it. And then they would be able to, scare all the people over to Hillary, who is a crisis actor. I mean, basically, Trump, I wouldn't even call a crisis actor because he's graduated over to Robotoid. And look, what they did is Marjorie Merriweather Post gave her 125-room Mar-a-Lago estate to the nation as the winter White House.
Wow.
And the U.S. Park Service accepted it. And then Donald Trump went and lobbied it and got it for $5 million. Okay? And said it, I mean, talk about an inside deal. And then, so he's been set up. He's a CIA Mossad mob patsy who they give free airtime to run scripts. He doesn't have a platform. The main elements of his platform is a CIA PSYOP. Build a 40-foot wall with Mexico. I mean, God, it's a CIA PSYOP. It doesn't exist. And so this whole thing, it's not a campaign. It's a huge CIA PSYOP. And it's the closest thing to Hillary Clinton is the closest thing to a crisis actor. Okay?
Yeah.
Ask Kathy O'Brien what she's done with Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I read that book. I mean, I've seen some of her interviews.
Yeah.
That's why I don't trust politicians, because they are literally like puppets.
Yeah.
All of them. I haven't seen one that isn't. And like I said in the second book, Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C., anybody who goes into politics that ends up in Washington is going to be altered permanently. And there's a name for it, of all things. They call it Beltway fever or Potomac fever.
Yeah,
because
Potomac
people
fever.
They notice, like family members, and people notice when you go there, you change.
But I think that's Draco, reptilian, and Orion Gray mind control.
Yes.
Fact, you and I have talked about it.
Yeah.
That as soon as they go there, that you become part of the Orion Empire, you become part of the 3 city-state empire of Vatican, City of London, and District of Columbia.
Right.
The the District of Columbia is the military subcontractor
Mm-hmm.
to the Vatican and the City of London. They carry out the wars for their military policy of the Pope and the Queen, and
Right.
that's what the U.S. does, and that's why the U.S. has no more industry except carry wars, and that's why you have 1 million U.S. soldiers on disability. Do you know?
Wow.
And the
Yeah.
reason why you have 1 million soldiers on disability is that George H.W. Bush and the George W. Bush
Mm.
administrations, which are Luciferian from Skull and Bones, is they intentionally
Right.
gave depleted uranium munitions to their troops without the necessary training and protection, so
Right.
they all would be disabled and give birth defects to the American wives and all the babies. That's what's been going on in America. That's how horrible and diabolical America has been targeted by the transhumanist agenda. So I think now that it's becoming visible through the evidence that we have now on Google, we just have to, but now they're running an AI campaign. So against the backdrop of Google, they're even faking Mars, the moon, and the Earth. And that's what was targeted by the Draco Orion Gray takeover, was Earth, Mars, and Moon by 2050. And that's why they entered into the secret treaties in 1933 with the U.S. first, and then with the Third Reich in 1933 and 1936. And it was the Orion Grays fronting for the Dracos, perhaps some insectoids in there. So I think that your evidence is key, is just really is key in showing that. And let's people should start boycotting Google and change their well,
That's going to be hard
what
to
are you
do.
going to do? Yeah, or at least trying to wake people up to Google.
Yeah.
Trying to wake up the Google people. It's not cool. It's not cool
Yeah.
to commit these vast frauds. Trying to wake up the world to what's going on.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if we could regain our sovereignty. I don't know if it'll happen, but let me just try and clarify something you're saying about these different entities. My understanding is that, as I said before, is that Enki, Lucifer, is originally from Orion. His empire is in direct competition with. There's a civil war between his empire and Orion. When you talk about Orion Grays, I think he fabricated them. Typically, those things are usually talked about as android, being androids, so they're like clones, and I think that he did that. He does have an alliance with different groups. So one of them is from Sirius, the other the Draco, but his particular stronghold, his court, center of operations is Aldebaran in Taurus, right next to Hades, I believe.
Wow.
Oddly enough. So, what else is weird is when I started doing this expose on Malibu and talking about how he actually had a base of operation in Malibu, right? Lucifer in Malibu. Ha, that's really funny. Well, Fox comes out with a show called Lucifer. It just started this year, January, and there you go. Lucifer has come to Los Angeles, and he opens up a nightclub called Lux, which means light, of course. And he's promoting himself as a good guy, just like he did with Sitchin. He's the savior. He's going to help us. It's like, oh my God. I have to tell you this because Jerry Wills.
Yeah.
All right. Jerry is the only other person that I know of personally that has stood face to face with this entity.
Wow.
And again, he was, and that blew me away but he called himself the Father. And he was Jerry said it was painful to look at him. He was so bright. okay, and he was surrounded by his court of people. And he doesn't like to talk about it very much, you know, and I understand why. And it has caused some friction between us when I started to tell him what I figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, naturally, I understand, you know, like I said, it's not an enviable position I'm in, okay? I really don't take pleasure in telling the public what I feel is really going on and why we should be concerned about it and how we can possibly extricate ourselves from it, or at least be prepared for ultimately, like I said, one of the reasons for this conversation is because if the super wave or a super wave is coming and it's going to affect everyone's consciousness, literally like cracking it open, if there's no preparation for that whatsoever, I think a lot of people will be utterly swept away by the moment, and they will not have enough clarity to make a very good decision for the future, for their personal future, maybe an eternity, the rest of eternity, because, you know, one of the lies we've been told is that we're insignificant, you know, just little like pawns, and that's not true. Why do you think they invest so much time and energy controlling us? If we're their battery, doesn't that tell you something about what we really are? Okay, and it's not what we've been told. We're not a bunch of mutated apes. Never were. That's one of the many lies. You know, one of the things about Lucifer, he's called the father of lies. He's not just the father of the archons. He's the father of all lies, because he can't tell the truth. Even if he wanted to, there's just too many conflicting, altered personalities in that one individual. And, you know, he's, like I said, he's not a normal guy, not like a normal mental case. We're talking about a god that has gone off the rails. So, I don't know what to add to all this. Alfred.
Well, no, I think that you brought some very, very important points to the fore, and you've opened up a conversation, and I really want to thank you for doing that. Are there any points that you had wanted to raise in this conversation and interview that you have not had the opportunity to raise?
Yeah, okay, just so people understand, I'm a very positive guy. I'm very fortunate, by the way. Oh, yeah, I guess I should tell you, when that individual, that woman, goddess, when she said that they would help me, it was demonstrable. My life definitely improved, and in every way. Okay, it's not perfect. I'm still here on Earth. I'm living the life, but it was so stark. It was literally like night and day. My life did improve. However, the reason they wanted me to stay here was to do what we're doing right now. The good guys wanted me to stay here to be a spokesperson for them, because it's so dangerous for them to come and walk among us. I mean, not only would they be misunderstood, ultimately they would be attacked. Nobody would hear their message. And I'm sure, you know, some people find me, you know, unbelievable, but that's fine. That's fine. But I'm being genuine. And it does transcend the fact that I am authentic and I don't have some hidden agenda. It transcends a lot of the so-called authority figures that are out there telling us, you know, what is or is not real, when in fact they're just playing games with us. You know, that lady never told me her name, but I have a very sneaky suspicion I know who it is. She's been with me since I was a child, and I think everybody should realize that one of the reasons that we talk about ISIS in a negative way is because Lucifer hates her. She was his first wife here. She's actually Enlil's daughter. Enlil being the prince, the brother, his brother. He literally abducted his brother's daughter, raped her, brought her here, and forced her to help him create part of his empire here. At some point, she rebelled and she's sort of an outcast from not only the Luciferian Empire, but the original Orion Empire. So a lot of this stuff that we see, what you call memes, it's intentional. He hates women. He specifically hates her, And I know, again, she's had a lot of different names. She's known by many different names. But the attribute that she carries is about giving hope to humanity. It's something that's been demonstrated to me time and time again. It's undeniable. And I see that she's a very clever individual, has to be in order to survive. So I guess I'm trying to say to people, there is hope, and we do have help, but it's sometimes it goes unrecognized. And one of the things that I found that helps me a lot is to be grateful. Just to be grateful, because it's no picnic being here. I understand that, being a pawn, being pushed around by these various forces, both good and bad. It's no picnic. It's not pleasant. But there is a purpose to all this. Ultimately, the goal is to get well. And I mean that for everybody, because here's the bottom line. We're all family. Every one of us is related. We're all related. And I mean, we've always been related. This concept of us being somehow separate, is it's just serving the Archon agenda. And ultimately, though, see, I just want people to understand I'm a very optimistic person, because I do see the bigger picture, and I have an understanding that this potential to resolve all this is real. Okay, no matter how we package it, no matter the words we use, ultimately, I've been given a sense of certainty that this is going to be resolved. They're not going to simply just let us go, when they know that most of us have been tricked into this, and that we're doing this that this is a violation. Okay, and it's also an abomination too. They recognize that it's just a mess. It's not easy. We are being held hostage here. One of the things that was made clear to me is that Lucifer has said, if you try and come in here and liberate these souls, I'll just annihilate everything. There'll be nothing left. And that's unacceptable. So, like I said, in a hostage situation, you can't just go there with brute force and expect to get the results you want. You don't want a bunch of dead people, okay? You don't want a bunch of destroyed souls. That's not going to help anybody. So just keep that in mind, okay? It's like, and really just take me out of the equation. I'm just a messenger. I didn't create this problem. I'm just reporting it, okay?
Right.
And hopefully, by having this dialogue, more people will recognize it for it is, and then start to, because I think individually we can do a lot more. In fact, I'm positive we can be more effective as souls here by just first of all being aware of what's going on, and secondly, using our willpower to stay calm, creative, peaceful, loving, because those energy waves, when we're thinking and feeling on that level, it actually has a cumulative effect. Okay, it's like dominoes, but in a good way. It's like we can affect other people positively, and that's how we can combat this every day. That's how I'm doing it, So yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can people get in touch with you and see your work and all of that?
Okay, it's my website at Unicus Magazine. It's spelled UNICUS magazine.com, and there's contact information there. There's an email if anybody wants to, and a lot of people do, by the way. I appreciate everybody that writes to me. Even there was a Yazidi guy that wrote to me about he's a Luciferian, and I didn't. He was actually offended that I was saying these things about Lucifer, and I said, "Well, do you know him? Have you ever met him? Do you? I mean, he's not the great guy that you think he is." And he says, "Well, you need to be more tolerant." And I said, "Sir, it has nothing to do with that. This is affecting everybody negatively. I have a right to complain about it, okay? But anyway, I do read everybody's email. I try and respond as best I can, and I appreciate the fact that people are even listening to this and are willing to, because I know for every person that writes to me, there's probably 10 or more that, you know, don't they just for whatever reason they don't want to, and that's good because I can only answer so many emails. But I do appreciate it. I really appreciate it, folks. Thank you very much for Alfred again for letting me have this time with you and to address your audience. And hopefully we can sort this out.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for this amazing breakthrough and evidence that you've brought to the table, and for all of your insights that you've shared with us, and for taking your time to come with us today. And I look forward to your joining us again as events develop.
No, thank you. My pleasure. It should be very interesting to see how this all plays out.
Great.
Thank you.